The industry, even though there is kind of a diverse way of looking at ethanol, it does appear that there is some cooperation from certain groups to move plans forward. Um, but that's how it's playing out here in the Midwest, with our rail and with ethanol and with other industries that are kind of emerging. There was another article in the Tuesday, November 9th Des Moines Register, and this is about the legislature. And I'm not going to put it on the camera. Put it on the camera. You can't see the title there. That's the part I'm going to read. One program likely on the chopping block, the Iowa Power Fund, which I just read a little snippet about, which would save about $25 million. Outgoing Chet Culver created the Power Fund to spur renewable energy research and development. Republicans have asked how many jobs the fund has created, and according to them, we are still waiting for an answer, which is what Craig Paulson said. The Culver administration credits the Power Fund with helping to create and sustain hundreds of jobs in wind energy and advanced biofuels. It has also provided funding for projects that could lead to future jobs, such as the nation's first compressed air storage facility for wind energy, or a project to convert manure and organic industrial waste into energy using an anaerobic digester. Iowa has a balanced budget and more than $750 million in cash reserves. Nonetheless, Craig Paulson has said the coming budget year will be tough because this year's budget was balanced using more than $700 million in so-called one-time funding, most of it federal stimulus money that won't be available in fiscal year 2012. And the way I see it, in my personal view, Iowa had to make do with what it had. A lot of states in the U.S. are floundering. You can look at California, you can look at Illinois, you can look at various states that have really come to the brink, and they're kind of searching for solutions. We did have to use our creativity and ingenuity in Iowa just to stay on top, or stay on the level, or stay even keel, and maintain our position. It did take a lot of creativity, and those who did step up to the plate brought in new industries, brought in funding, and managed to balance the budget. And I think that should be applauded rather than denigrated, because if you look at our unemployment rate, it is considerably lower than in other places in the U.S. And I think that's something that should be acknowledged. Even as we do make plans for the future, we do have to make sure that we're recognizing what's happening in terms of economic instability, in the entire U.S., and then just do what we can to stay above water within reason. But I did find something in City View that kind of addressed issues like this as they come up, how we allocate our money, and then when politics comes involved, how should we respond to that? This is how City View responded. I don't often use articles from City View simply because I'm searching for specific articles on jobs and renewable energy and planning and policy. But today I did find something in City View that I'll show. And enough is enough. It pretty much speaks for itself. And I'll read a little bit of it just to see what the alternative perspective is. But it's an essay in support of congressional term limits. And it just kind of describes the entire process of how to make laws and how policy becomes a part of our whole political system. And this is by Craig Voss. For proposed legislation to become law, a bill needs to be sponsored. Then it goes through committees, subcommittees, full committees, hearings, debates, reports, arguments, testimonies, and conference committees. And all the while there is lobbying, spinning, politicking, compromising, deal making, and pandering going on. If a bill can even make it through that cursory list of procedures, a president or governor can veto it. All of this serves to prevent an individual or partisan group from having too much power. Separation of powers works well inside the government labyrinth, maybe too well. We have gone from checks and balances to gridlock, paralysis, and corruption. However, I can say in the state of Iowa, we did manage to, again, keep our heads above water, and our policymakers and our community leaders should be applauded for having done that. It was not easy to do in other places in the U.S. As if you've been paying attention to the news, there are a lot of horror stories. There's another article that I found, and this is from the Christian Science Monitor, and I'll put it on the camera, which is very hard to see here. Green energy at the grassroots, living off the grid of big electric utilities. Let's see. Oh, there I am. So in this article, it says that public electric utilities will need thousands of miles of new transmission lines to bring solar and wind power to cities. One alternative could be microgrids, or local production of power from clean energy. And we did speak about that in a previous episode about creating a micro industrial agricultural economy for energy use and manufacturing in the Midwest. And in my view, that's still on the table, and it's something that should be considered in light of what we're seeing in terms of gridlock other places, particularly from the East Coast. But the push for clean energy in many states and in Congress is also running into the need to build some 5,000 miles of transmission lines to carry electricity from the wind-rich Midwest and solar-intense Southwest to heavily populated areas. This is no easy task. The obstacles could prove to be a bottleneck for the growth of renewables. The taking of land for new lines by governments, for example, could be as big an effort as the construction of the interstate highway system. And then I'll add in the rural electrification that we accomplished during the early part of the last century. Another issue is the cost burden. Should consumers pay for new electric lines or the companies that generate power from renewables? One alternative to erecting a new high voltage lines across America are local self-contained, quote-unquote, green producers of electricity that are tied together in so-called microgrids. Cities such as Austin, Texas, and Sacramento, California are venturing towards these homegrown islands of power, and the U.S. military also plans to have some bases generate their own renewable power. Alas, the article goes on to say many public utilities are using their political clout with the states and Washington, D.C., to continue the reliance on big baseload generation and long-distance distribution of electricity. Their arguments are often technical, such as the variability of solar and wind. And so that's one way the Christian Science Monitor covered that. One solution that I found was in another article, and this is also from the Christian Science Monitor, and you can see that right there. Homeowners join forces to save on solar panels, and it kind of goes back to the whole gridlock and politicking and pandering that goes on when it comes to energy and infrastructure and power issues. This is how some people have found a solution. The breakthrough came in June when Lortz, and this is Ed Lortz, attended a seminar for One Block Off the Grid. And this is an organization that was formed to help people ease into a greener future. It's a San Francisco startup that brings together groups of homeowners that are interested in solar panels.